Do big things, baby. This episode is brought to you by Do Big Things. Go ahead and learn about our conference, dobigthings.net. It's November 2nd through the 4th here in sunny South Florida. I mean, think about it. My goodness. Who don't want to be in Florida in November? I'm sure you would like to be here as well. Well, check it out. Go to dobigthings.net, and I'd love to be able to meet you in person. We can chat, have a good time, connect. Hey, look forward to it. To learn more, go to dobigthings.net. Again, dobigthings.net. You know, one of the interesting things that we find is that sometimes as a sales leader, you may not be the most, let's put it like this, experienced person on the block. Sometimes you may have folks that you're leading who may be old enough to be your dad. Hey, I've seen experiences like that. And my guest today, Jay Cullenhan, has seen similar situations as well. He's going to talk to us more about leading a team of experienced veterans when you are a young sales leader. You're going to love this discussion. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist podcast. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. As you heard on the teaser there, we have a great discussion. It's going to be talking more about how we can lead a team of veteran sellers when we're not too experienced ourselves. Or we may have folks who are way older than we are, and we have to lead them. You're going to enjoy some of the great insights that my buddy Jay has to share. But before we dive into all that fun stuff, you know I have to give some shout-outs, right? I want to give a huge shout out to the folks over at Carry On Friends, Marlene Rice, Rob Evans, and Eric Graham. Thank you guys so much for connecting with me, and I wish you guys great success. Dr. Robin Johnson, thank you so much for connecting as well. And Diane Brennan, thank you guys so much for connecting with me. If you'd like to connect as well, you can find me on LinkedIn, Donald C. Kelly. You can find me on Twitter, Donald C. Kelly. You can also find me on Instagram, Donald C. Kelly. Either one of these places, I'd love to connect with you, learn about you, what are some of the challenges you're going through, some of the successes you're seeing, how you found a podcast, what you're selling. I mean, I'd love to get connected with you and learn some of these things, man. Feel free to find me, Donald C. Kelly on LinkedIn, Donald C. Kelly on Instagram, Donald C. Kelly on Twitter, or Sales Evangelizers on Facebook or LinkedIn. Both of those are community. They're private groups. Shh, don't tell anybody about them. Just kidding. Feel free to spread the word, man. We want to get the community out there. We want everyone who's selling to be able to come here as their go-to resource, the Sales Evangelizers. So please help us evangelize. We have a great discussion at hand, so I won't take up much more time. Let's dive into the episode. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Donald Kelly, what's up, man? Happy to be here.
You know, I'm excited, man. I'm stoked for this episode, and we're going to discuss the topic, as I mentioned in the teaser there, how to lead a veteran sales team as a young sales leader. And I know you're going to provide us great insights with this, great information. But before we dive into all that fun stuff, man, why don't you tell us about your coolest sales experience when you were the actual customer?
Yeah, man. I love this question. Can I give you two?
Shoot, you can give me three.
All right, cool, man. Well, it's funny. I asked my wife this, and the first thing that she said is Amazon, meaning, Amazon.com. And I asked her why, and she said, it's simple and it's clear. And I was like, well, what do you mean? It's so simple, it's clear. She said, I know exactly what the price is. I know exactly when it gets here. I know exactly what the return policy is. And I was just thinking, this is a cool question because you can correlate it back to your own sales experience that, being clear and simple and just having all the information out there so you can make a decision is really what drives a lot of people. I think you covered this on what episode, maybe episode 349, maybe on, making it clear. It was perfect. If you guys want to reference back to that. So that's my wife's. Mine is, I don't know if you know this chain of grocery stores. It's called Harris Teeter. I don't know if they have them down south, but it's just it's kind of like a higher end grocery store. And my wife and I went recently on vacation. We went to go get the food and everything. And I have two little boys, 3 and 1, and the 1-year-old just going crazy. I mean, like having a complete meltdown, and as parents, you're kind of taught to ignore it and let them have their thing. Don't give it attention. And so that's what we did from the time we got the Harris Teeter until 25 minutes later. My little one was just bloody murder screaming. And every single person at Harris Teeter looked at us with a huge smile. We didn't have one reaction. They just kind of, without saying anything, understood. We actually had one of the checkout guys give my little guy a banana, which made him happy. Just them understanding kind of what we were going through. Like, we just needed to get this stuff and get out of there. And our little man was going crazy, and they kind of understood we were ignoring it. And so just like that experience will, if they ever open a Harris Teeter by here, I'm paying the extra money and I'm going, that's for sure.
Well, I'll have to look out for one of those, man. And that's pretty cool, man, where people just like, They go above and beyond. That's what I love. Whenever I hear the story and I go back through all these episodes and people tell me the coolest sales experience, it usually tied to someone going above and beyond a Call of Duty and just making it personal to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. It's and what's funny is it doesn't take a lot of effort. It's pretty easy to do it, right?
I know, and then it becomes memorable, and then you go talk about it on podcasts.
Yeah, Harris Teeter, you need to pay me something for this.
We're going to put them in our show notes, so we'll make sure that they can hear about this, man. But talking about that, Jay, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you do, man?
Yeah, I've been in B2B sales for 6 years now, and it's currently what I do. I mean, just like a lot of your listeners, I manage a territory. I manage a book of business over a couple states here in the Mid-Atlantic area. And dad, a husband, and a father, and just really trying to grow my business every day to support the family, and always trying to consume as much sales content as I can to grow myself. That's why I love your podcast.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I always appreciate the kind words and the support you give to the show, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, that's how we got to this. We got in touch with each other, and you mentioned this topic, and we thought it would be great for the show. It's managing veteran sellers leading veteran sellers as a sales leader, a young sales leader specifically. And there are so many different dynamics that can fall into this category. But first of all, why is this such an important thing to discuss in the first place to you, Jay? Yeah,
well, I mean, personally, for me, that's kind of where I'm at. It's funny. This can be used on both sides of the coin, whether you're leading or you're managing. I mean, in my situation, we have a makeup of a more veteran sales team, more senior salespeople. And I'm, a younger guy, and, relatively, I'm 31 years old. So I'm kind of the sales leader. I have more responsibilities. I run morning calls. I mentor some of the younger reps when they do come into our peer group. It's an interesting dynamic, whether you're a young person directly managing the team or you're kind of the de facto sales leader. There's a lot of examples throughout the week and throughout the year where you're trying to influence individual and team performance. And it's a very interesting dynamic when you throw in the kind of veteran presence of the sales team behind you. You're probably thinking, if you are a young sales leader, are they thinking, what does this guy know? Is he going to be cocky? Is he going to blow out his numbers and make us all look bad? I mean, and as the sales leader, you're responsible for rising the tide. So it's an interesting dynamic to try to influence under those circumstances.
How does that affect you psychologically to know, like, hey, because I've been in situations where you're working with folks who can old enough to be like my dad, man. We're the same age. We're both, 31. But how did you feel like in a situation like that? Was it like, were you ever intimidated by some degree or have some kind of doubt in a sense?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's a great question, because that's the first thing that happens is, when you're in this kind of situation, should I be doing something different? Is there a different way to approach this? Is what I did previously as an individual sales rep, does that translate to leading and managing a more senior group? And what's interesting is the internal battle with yourself is really, really important, because what you accomplish individually is not always going to get you where you need to go in terms of managing and leading a more senior rep. You really need to check your ego at the door, because, as a young guy, you're hustling, you're grinding, whatever you want to say. You're by yourself all day, and your ego is really pushing you forward, not necessarily in the meeting, but the aura around it is really driving you. It's your persistence. It's all fed by the ego. So I think it's important to focus on the core principles of selling a customer. It's really the same thing in terms of managing and leading a young sales team, because at the end of the day, we're just talking about, people here. And the basic structure of a sales call is build trust and understand the need and offer a solution that might work for the customer. It's the same thing for your peer group. And, like my man Zig says, Zig Ziglar, this is, an overused Zig quote for you.
Never overused, never.
He always says, sales isn't something you do to somebody, it's something you do with somebody. And so in order to really have influence, especially on a more senior group, you have to be in it with them, and you have to be on their level.
I like that idea, being there on their level. Have you ever had anyone, just out of curiosity, that almost came up and questioned your ability to lead, being younger?
Oh, man. Question my ability to lead. I mean, yeah, I've had, and what's funny, Donald, is when these kind of situations come up, they don't always present themselves as clearly as, as everyone thinks. It's not like I'm on the sales call and the guy says, listen, Jay, you're just too young to lead. You know what I mean? And so in order to pinpoint these situations, you really have to put your awareness outward and identify these little traits. And actually, I in my current role, I have had a couple situations where whatever the language was, it was an indication to me that things weren't going as smoothly, that maybe I was a little bit of a younger up and comer for them, and they weren't really feeling my style. And, one of the main things I do in these situations with the senior group is there's so many years of experience behind them. I mean, I work with people that have been in the business for 30 years. I mean, Donald, I've only been in the workforce I haven't even been working for 10 years. So there's out of that 30 years, there is a wealth of knowledge you can gain. And simply just by setting time aside and asking for their advice, I mean, and you can really tailor it once you get to know these people on your team, you can tailor it specifically to them. And not only is it an insanely quickly way to endear them to you, you're just by asking advice, you're you're just giving them respect because you want to hear what they have to say. It's a really, really powerful thing. And not only are you endearing yourself to them and giving them respect, but I mean, 30 years, chances are this person will probably help you out.
Yeah, they may have been around the block once or twice. And, this led into one of the conversations that I had last week with a friend of mine. We were doing the episode. It's like each rep is so different. You know what I mean? And I feel at some point, and I've done this unfortunately, but we treat everyone the same. And that's the mantra that I've developed over the years now, is that you need to treat others the way that they would like to be treated. I learned this from one of my mentors. You can't treat everyone the same, and everyone on your team may be different in those scopes of experience or expertise. And the way you manage like a new rep in comparison to someone who's been selling for a while, or even someone who's been selling for a while, but it's just like, not doing well. The way you manage these individuals are so different. Tell me about your experience on that side.
Oh my gosh, Donald. This is reminding me of a really great story. When I first started working, my manager was a little more aggressive than I was. And my style is not, I mean, I don't know if I'm coming across, I'm really not an aggressive sales rep. My kind of theory is I can ask, pointed questions and get to where I need to go without putting anybody off. That's kind of my goal when I go into any sales call. And I was just a young guy and I didn't have a lot of experience. And my manager at the time was aggressive. I mean, he was kind of known as like an aggressive guy, and it worked for him. That was his style. It's important to note that. And so I went into the sales call. I was in a nursing home at the time, and I did my thing, and I just flat out said, "So what do you think? Are you going to buy?" And this poor director of nursing, she just, looking back on it, this sounds so painful. She just said, with a ton of hesitation that I didn't see through. I just totally focused on the sales. She says, yes, we'll buy. And I go, okay, so what do we do next? And she's like, I'm not 100% sure. And I say, well, when you buy something, what do you do? And she said, well, we Central Supply buys. And I said, okay. So I left the office. I went down to Central Supply and I said, hey, Central Supply guy, this director of nursing, she wants to buy the product. Can you please place the order? He looked me dead in the face and he said, Cindy said that? And I said, yeah. She said she wants to buy. She told me she wants to buy. This is the product. Can you please place the order? And he goes, yeah, I'll place the order. And that old adage, what's the quickest way to get rid of a sales guy is to tell him yes, right? So, of course, he told me yes. I left the appointment. I followed back up a week later. And, of course, no order. A day later, a week and a day, a week and 2 days, week and 3 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. No order. Called back, couldn't get the appointment. And so I just started thinking, wow, this is, number one, I'm not that type of aggressive sales rep. And if my manager at the time had kind of, let me be okay with using my own style, I would have been in much better shape. I wouldn't have been so focused on the immediate sale. We could have explored something else and maybe I could have sold a bigger ticket item. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the story that really resonated with me.
That is awesome, man. Fantastic. There's a underlining point in that, man. You just got to be you. Especially when we do sales training, sometimes people feel if I follow this person or if I read their books, if I listen to them and their success, I got to act like that. And unfortunately, we cannot all do that same thing. I mean, one of my sales trainers used to always say, you were born an original, don't die a copy. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, that's great.
You can't,
That's
man.
great.
Out of curiosity, what were you selling with the nursing homes?
Oh, yeah, nutritional products.
Okay, I worked with nursing homes as well, and assisted living facilities. One of my first jobs out of college, and we did mobile X-ray services. So I was the sales rep that got the facilities. So it's pretty cool. My friend's company down here in South Florida, they're actually one of my clients right now. So shout out to them, Portable Medical Diagnostics.
Yeah, very good.
That's cool, man. But what are some of the other things that we need to realize when we're managing a veteran sales team, and we may be, or leading a veteran sales team, but we may be the younger guys on the squad?
Yeah, definitely. I think celebrating your failures, but doing it with a lesson attached to it. I mean, when you're leading, a more senior sales group, there's a lot of opportunities to be speaking to the group as a whole. And so when you're, as senior people, they want to be respected, and they're not just going to give you respect. They've been around the block. There's kind of an older school mentality. So if you're willing to put yourself out there in the form, of a failure with a real lesson attached to it, number one, it's going to, like I said, humble you in front of them. You'll get a ton of respect for it. And really, it'll give them space to be more honest with their failures. Or they may say, hey, listen, like Jay's the one putting himself out there. Maybe I don't need to release my failure if there's any, if they're just not feeling like they want to do that in front of the group. I had this reminded me of another story. I had a staffing job, Donald, where I was running the office, and I had a couple of recruiters under my belt, and we were doing pretty good. And I had this guy call me for medical assistants, which are like they draw blood in an office. And he was killing me on like the bill rate. I just couldn't afford to do it. And he got me on the phone with the CEO. And, at the time I was pretty young. The CEO kind of like crushed me into submission. I was pretty nervous. And I agreed to do it under the low bill rate. And at the time, there wasn't a whole lot of open communication between myself and my manager at the time. And long story short, I didn't perform. I could not get any medical assistant to work for that price. And instead of like talking with my manager about it, I got in deep, man. This guy had like 10 offices. I couldn't supply anybody. He ended up calling our vice president of sales and just railed and went off. And my manager called me that day and she said, like, why didn't you tell me about this? And I just said, listen, I was just trying to fix the problem. I didn't want to disappoint you. To be honest with you, I didn't want to get in trouble. And she was just like, listen, I'm sorry if I haven't made this clear, but please, like, get me involved. And that's kind of the point, is when you're actively out there putting yourself out in front of the group and letting them know that, listen, like, learning from the failures is the path to moving forward. Number one, you're going to get respect from a senior team. And number two, you're going to, rise the tide of everybody much quicker.
Yeah, I like that, man. You got to be able to reach out. I've heard stories on stories, and I've done the same exact thing, man, because I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to look stupid. So I went ahead and did some of those deals. And you're right. When it's all said and done, it's not that you're not looking stupid. It would be horrible when you give away the farm and your company get in a bad situation, as opposed to getting something fixed at the get-go. And it sounds like when you have those good managers, those good leaders, they're able to listen to you and to be there as a support, as a coach, as opposed to, a tyrant and me. And I think probably 90% of the managers out there, folks who are, want to lead their team, they want their team to be successful. They'll be more than willing to find a way to help. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%, man. It makes a huge difference. And the thing is that, like, most managers, it's their fault, but it's not. I mean, it's not that they don't want to hear the failures. It's just that they're not communicating it properly. That's the problem.
How do you communicate that properly to your team that you're willing to do? How do you do it right now yourself?
Oh, I mean, I do it. We have weekly calls, and I put myself out there first. That's the main way I do it. I mean, the way you gain respect from a veteran sales team, or really any sales team, is, like I said before, you need to, like Zig says, you got to do it with them. You got to bring them along, and, doing it is the way to do it. I mean, actually noting your failures, whether they're current, I'm lucky where I'm actually managing the territory. So I have active failures every week that I can talk about. But, if you're a manager and you're not necessarily making calls every day, you can think back onto your past failures and swallow your ego. I mean, if the main goal is to influence individual and team performance, and however you can do it is the right way. And actively sharing your failures, I think, is the best way to do it.
I was going to say that probably is probably like the money right there, because people see that you're not perfect. One of the things that people tell me, even on my podcast, because I share some of my stupid stuff, man, I'm not perfect. I've lost some money and I've done some stupid deals, but you learn from that, man. You do an episode on it and you laugh about it, and people see that and they're like, this guy he has a podcast, he has these things going on for him, he's doing these things, but still yet he messes up and makes mistakes, and it shows that we're all human. And what I dislike is when people try to be perfect, and we know they're not. Everyone makes mistakes, but you got to show those mistakes, and that's when people see that you're approachable, if that makes sense. And they're willing to trust you more. They're like, man, if this guy messes up and did that, and he learned from it, I can learn from my mistakes too, man. So it helped me to build strong relationships with some of my folks who listen to the podcast. Oh
my gosh, Donald, I mean, you're so right on with that. Being vulnerable is one of the quickest ways to build trust. And once you build trust as a leader or direct manager, you're in the zone of transparency. And so think about it. I mean, if I'm vulnerable and that creates trust for somebody on my team, for me as a leader, the next time they're in a situation where, they've overpromised to the CEO and there's no way they can fulfill, they'll reach out, they'll reach out quicker because they trust you. And then you can solve the issue much faster. The learning curve gets shorter. And then all of a sudden, everyone's meeting their metrics in a much faster rate than they did before.
As we get ready to come down to the tail end, are there any more tips or advice you'd want to give to a young leader who's out there?
Yeah, the last one I'll say is just find ways to give other people credit. I mean, consistently do it. Just like growing a territory and growing a business is a marathon. And, the short-sighted leaders are going to swallow success or the small, whatever. There's a lot of dynamics here, but they're going to swallow and take the small wins or even the big wins up front. And you're snatching that motivation and progress away from your team when you do that. And if you're in any kind of organization, the sales manager it's a pride swallowing gig, or the sales leader. It really is, because your goal, like I keep saying, is to rise the individual and the team performance. And in order to do that, you really, no matter how much influence you had in the sell or the big win, giving away the success and giving the attaboys out to your team is really an important key. I don't know how to say it. Yeah, it's a very important key.
Dude, totally agree with that, man. There's nothing that can fuel excitement and respect more so than when you give credit, give credit where credit's due. And I feel so often when I've had the leaders, unfortunately, who were more for themselves and had their self-ego, it didn't make me want to perform for the team. But when those leaders that were there coaching me and helping me and guiding me, I wanted to perform for the team. I wanted to make them look good for their bosses, you know what I mean? So I made sure I got those. I just wanted the team to look good at that point. And I think that's an important part there.
Right. I mean, think about it. Are you more or less likely to execute a cold call or a business meeting or a follow-up email knowing that the manager is going to take 100% credit for it?
Oh, heck nah, bro.
Right. Shoot, man. So, I mean, giving it up is such a powerful thing for your reps to move forward.
That's so good, man. Well, I appreciate this, man. If there's one major takeaway you'd like somebody listening to the show from everything we discussed to walk away with, what's that one major piece of advice, Jay?
Oh, man. This isn't necessarily related to all the stuff we've been talking about, but I always say there's a guy who does like a marketing podcast. I like listening to sometimes to stuff outside of sales, just from like an associative thinking standpoint. So maybe I can take something and apply it to sales. And it's Scott McCain is what it is. He does this podcast called Create Distinction. And I don't even know what episode it is, but he says everything matters when you're dealing with customers. Everything matters. And I was kind of thinking everything matters. That's kind of like obscure and a little like obtuse. What does that mean? He just means like from the minute you roll up to your timing. Are you on point for the meeting? Are you consistent with your follow-up? The way you dress, the way you sit in the lobby. Are you on your phone? Are you engaged? Like these kind of things matter because you're not only being judged against the competition directly in your business market, you're being judged against everybody else they've come in contact that day. And so, I mean, if you can rise to the level of being the most notable person that day, then you'll be well on your way to success.
Dude, love it, man. If there are folks out there listening to you and they say, hey, man, I want to get in touch with Jay. He sounds like he's a cool cat, man. What's the best way for them to connect with you?
That would be cool if people thought I was a cool cat.
Man, you're Jay, man. You gotta be a cool cat, man. Who has a name like Jay? That's not cool.
I know, right? Right. I do. I spit out some blogs maybe once or twice a month just on experiences that I've had. It's a pretty simple blog. It's just that I call it sellingwithoutselling.wordpress.com. So it's nothing fancy. It's just kind of my musings on some of the stuff I come across every day. And my personal email is just first and last name, jcullinan@gmail.com.
Well, Jay, we'll put that information in our show notes so folks can get access to you guys and to learn more about you and what you're doing, man. But thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today.
Awesome, Donald. Thanks, man. It's a pleasure.
My boy Jay brought it. Told you the man knows what he's talking about to give us some great insights. If you'd like to get connected with Jay, simply go to thesalesevangelist.com/the word episode, the number 386. Again, thesalesevangelist.com/the word episode, the number 386 to get connected with my buddy Jay. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. And he just has a lot of resources that can help you out as well. But, you know, all the good things that we do on the show, all these people that we bring on, all of this stuff, it's all for you to be successful. So I want to hear your story. I want to hear what you're doing, how you're implementing these things and the difference you're seeing in your selling career. If you're not improving, something is wrong. I want to help you to fix that. If you're stagnant, no good. If you're declining, that's worse. If you're, just killing it and you're making tons of money, you're doing really well, that is awesome. Please come and tell us and share with me some of those great things that you're doing. All in all, I want you to be happy. I want you to be successful. But most importantly, I want you to go out and do big things.